Hey guys, Alan here, Solid Rock Bible Class. Thanks for being with me. We're going to be staying down the line of character traits of Jesus. We're going to be talking about being optimistic today. Optimistic, positive thinking, meditating upon the most hopeful aspects of any situation. We're looking at the Old Testament first, and we see Joshua and Caleb here. They've came back with a good report. We can overcome the land, and 10 spies have came back saying, no, they'll devour us up. They'll kill us if we go into the land. In Numbers, the 13th chapter, verse 30, we see Caleb talking. And he says, and Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. In Romans, the 8th chapter, verse 25, I love this verse. It says, but if we hope for that which we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. We need this positive thinking. So how in the world do we take and become positive? We become optimistic in a very pessimistic world. And there's a lot of different books that are out there. I like personally to listen to several different speakers that kind of keep me down that positive line as much as I can, because I seem to tend to head towards the negative sometimes. But there's all kinds of helps out there to help us with that. And being negative on certain situations isn't always a bad situation, by the way. But we need overall to have this positive attitude about people, about things, about the way God is taking and dealing with our lives. Positive attitudes and positive thinking, they're important. Nevertheless, no matter what we do here, some people are just going to be plain negative, plain pessimistic. Negative attitudes results in negative actions. Positive attitudes, they result in positive actions. And that's been taken and shown over and over through the years. There's a story I've heard. I thought I would just tell it to you briefly. It kind of fits in here. And it's a story about a small little boy. He has this positive attitude. He's out in the yard. He's playing by himself out in the yard. He has a baseball. He has a bat. And he says to himself, I'm going to be the greatest batter in all the world. So he takes and he throws the ball up into the air. He swings with the bat and he misses. He says, well, strike one. He takes and he throws the ball up in the air the second time, and he swings again, and he misses. Strike two. And again, he does that the very same way. He throws the ball up in the air. He swings at it. Strike three. He's out. But unwilling to take and kind of be defeated here as far as his optimistic thought, he says, wow, I'm the greatest pitcher in the world. So, you know, the Apostle Paul was one of the most positive thinking people out there, yet he went through some extremely bad situations. He went through a lot of trouble, but he was a very positive thinker. Man, he was beaten, he was imprisoned, he was ran out of towns, he was hated. But what was his attitude? When we look in the book of 2 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, verse 10, it says, therefore, I take pleasure in my infirmities. Wow. I take pleasure in my infirmities. Positive thinking. Because he goes on to talk about that he did it for Christ's sake. Is that a positive attitude or what? Why did Paul take such a positive attitude? If we look into, again, 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter here, I'm going to read several verses. Picking up in verse number 7 here. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that its excellency of power may be of God and not of us. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persuaded, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. And then verse number 10. Always bearing about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus Christ, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. So he's telling us here that we need to stay positive and we need to think about Christ in our life. Staying in 2 Corinthians in the 4th chapter, verses 16 and 17, he says, "For which cause we faint not, but through our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day." Notice, day by day. Verse 17. "For our light affliction." He says, our light affliction. Sometimes it doesn't feel so light, "Which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." So life, it's going to be full of negative things. It's going to be full of negatives. We live in kind of a no-no world, I think, yeah? Very negative, very pessimistic. All you have to do is pick up the newspaper, flip on the television news. But, the Bible, when we look at it, it's full of positives. In Philippians, the 4th chapter, verse number 8, he says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." That's where we need to put our thought patterns. But where I want to spend most of the time here, or the rest of the time here, is going to be turning over into the book of Luke in the 15th chapter. And I want us to look to a story that we all know. We've heard it a million times. And it's that story of the prodigal son and his elder brother and his father. By the way, just as we kind of think about it, the word prodigal here, it doesn't appear any place in the Bible. It's something that we've assigned to the name. The only thing we'll find it attached to is a title, possibly, that our Bible has put in there. But the word, isn't mentioned any place in scriptures. But that word prodigal, it means wasteful, extravagant, a spendthrift. So let's look at the optimism, first of all, as we get in here in chapter 15, verses 11 and 12. We see this younger son. I'm not going to read it all, the entire thing, because we're just going to talk about it here. I think most of us have read it many times. But the younger son, he's wild. He's the wild child, He wasn't responsible in life, and I guess we might kind of call him that free spirit person. And the father knew his son. There's no question that the father knew him. He knew what he would do with this instant wealth that he had asked for, yet he went ahead and divided the inheritance early. He didn't have to do it. So why did he do it? The father, I think, maybe was optimistic. What's the difference between optimistic and pessimistic? Well, someone once said the optimist, invented the airplane, and the pessimist, they took and they invented the parachute. The optimist may say, "My cup runneth over. What a blessing." The pessimist says, "My cup runneth over. What a mess." What was lacking in this young man's life? Discipline, evidently. The young child just had no discipline. He was that wild child, as I said. As hard as his father tried with him, I see that he just wasn't getting any place. The young man was unhappy at home. The father was unable to teach him any kind of responsibility to install into his life and have a proper ethic as far as life and work. But the father, he was the optimist. The best thing he could do for his son was to take and put him in a different school where he could take and he could learn some lessons. We call it the school of hard knocks. And I think every single one of us have been in that school of hard knocks at some point in time. Sometimes we have to go through the school of hard knocks to get some sense kind of knocked into our heads. Don't we? I think we do. God knows what's best for us. He's an optimist. He sees the good even in the bad of our lives. We go on here in verses 13 through 16, and sure enough, what did he do? He acted irresponsibly. He wasted this entire inheritance that he was given. And I'm sure it broke his father's heart. But his father, again, he was an optimist. He knew what his son needed, and he loved him enough to kind of administer what sometimes we call tough love. This is what it took to make him realize that his life at home with his father wasn't so bad after all. You know, the kid had it pretty good. Maybe now he could take and begin to see the blessings that he had, and things that he was missing from home. In verse 17, chapter 15 and verse 17, the prodigal son, he didn't take advantage of his sonship. And I think sometimes in our Christian life, sometimes we don't take advantage of our sonship that we have with God. Can you kind of identify with that a little bit? Sometimes I can. You know, at home, this prodigal son, he had friends that loved him. Now what? He lost all his friends. He was off in a strange land. Now he had no money. He had no home. Didn't have any food to eat. Now he's hungry. He didn't have clean clothes on. And now he was covered with hog slop, wasn't he? And he was in a desperate situation. So when he was back home, he had a good job. But now he's slopping the hogs. What has God's blessings done for us? Many times we overlook all the blessings and all the things he's done for us. You know, we seldom take and pick up our Bibles and read it. Our prayer life. We have direct communication, but do we communicate with God? A relationship with Jesus, that child of the King. Yet we seldom go to prayer. Maybe in this parable that Jesus was talking about here, maybe he wants us to look at ourselves as that prodigal son. But let's look at the father for a little bit here, because I do want to look at the optimistic side of it, not just the pessimistic side of it. The father, as I said, he was an optimist. He saw the good on his son. And in that, he knew that the son would one day turn around and come home. The father never gave up on him as we look into verse number 20. He's that optimist. Daily he took and he went out down at the end of the road looking for that son to come, just dragging in. He never gave up. He always looked for the very best. He was always hopeful. He was always praying. His prayer, his faith, his hope finally was rewarded as we look down into verses 21 through 24. Now, let's take a look at this pessimist a little more. Who's the pessimist? Let's look at the pessimist of the elder brother. He's angry. Why is he angry? He was a pessimist. He couldn't see the good in his brother's return. His brother had gone off and spent the inheritance, made a fool of himself, shamed the family. Now he was coming home to take up where he left off. You know, he kind of had that attitude of, how dare he? What makes him think everything's going to be okay? Just like before. Who does he think he is, right? Why such a big fuss over him coming back when I've been here the whole time? I think as we look at that elder brother, he's an eternal pessimist here. Always looking at the negative, always looking at the bad, always looking at the problem, always looking at that downside. In verses 29 through 30 of chapter 15 here, what was the problem? What was the main problem here? The elder brother never enjoyed all the blessings that were available to him as being a son. He could have had a fatted calf anytime he wanted. He had the right. But didn't he do it with a heart of love? He didn't do it out of a heart of love. The work there at the house, on the farm, he did it out of a sense of duty. The elder brother never took and enjoyed all the blessings that were available to him. He was just living in that negative mindset, living in the midst of abundance, yet he's a pessimist. But now, what do we see? We see the younger brother has finally realized this great joy, this great blessing he had been missing out on, and how he could have wasted these great opportunities, how he had not taken advantage of the sonship that he had. And didn't realize it until it was all taken away from him. He realized he was lost. Now he had come home, and and was ready to take and not only enjoy the blessings, but as we see him returning, he wants to be a blessing to his dad. He says, I don't deserve to be your son. I just need to be one of your slaves, one of your servants, because they have it good. But his son, or the father, of course, wouldn't even think of that. I think sometimes we can identify with that elder brother. Everything he needed to live an exciting and abundant life was available to him. He just didn't make himself available to it. So let's turn again to this optimistic father. In verses 31 and 32, we see this is a call from death to life. The father thought he was dead, possibly, but now he's life. From pessimism to optimism, from abstaining to participating. So who can you more really identify with when we look at some of these people here in the story? The older brother, who had everything available to him, but didn't take advantage of it. He didn't enjoy it. He was the pessimist. The one who had everything handed to him, but didn't take and participate, or that prodigal son who didn't enjoy the blessings until they were taken away, who finally took and came to his senses, and he returned home with a different attitude. Or maybe that optimistic father who never gave up, who always prayed, who always trusted God. No matter how dark the storm clouds seemed to be, he trusted God. So I guess really, as we look at this, I'll wrap it right here. I'm like at my 20-minute mark where I always am, or try to be. Going back to what we talked about at the very beginning. Your cup runneth over. Are you the pessimist that says, what a mess, or are you the optimist that says, what a blessing? We need to keep a positive attitude. Listen to positive things. Read positive things. Listen to God's word. Have a great communication with God through our prayer life. It's what it's going to take for us to take and live positive, to live optimistic. This is Alan. I'll catch you guys on the other side a little bit later on. Thank you.